everyone, and welcome to Replit 101 and Coding Helpline, where we are going to be taking your coding questions and trying to solve them live on air, possibly leading to me being very embarrassed for a significant period of time as I struggle to work out what your Next.js problems actually mean. But there we go. My name's David Morgan. I'm the teacher here at Replit, and you may recognize me from 100 Days of Code, where you may have been seeing my beautiful bald bonce several minutes at a time every single day. We are here to help new coders and old coders alike with any of your programming problems. But let's start off with melting the ice a little bit by getting involved and stuck into some cool features of Replit. Let's pop my screen up and oh dear, oh, how embarrassing. I appear to have the 100 Days of Code page up, but it's here for a reason, because if you are partaking in our 100 Days of Code challenge, we've just released a bunch of new content. Everything up from day 15 to day 22 has been populated today to keep you going for another couple of days. I'd love to see where you get stuck. I'd love to see how you get on with it. So please do go and carry on with those days, or share it with people that are new to coding or need a bit of a refresh. You know who they are. It's all in Python, but you know, Python is one of the most popular languages and is close to my heart. So what are we going to do to get started today? Well, I've built this. Replit is a brilliant platform for hosting your code. One of the things that I love about it, and the reason that I left being a full-time teacher in a school to work for Replit, is because it makes it so easy to go from writing the code to actually sharing it. And let's be honest, how many of us have always been frustrated that the thing we're so good at is hard to share? Well, not on Replit. What we're going to do, I'm going to share with you a multiplayer invite to my Repl in a moment. And all I'd like you to do, very, very simply, is I'd like you to copy and paste lines 16 to 20 into this gap. And I'd like you to fill in your name, your location, and what your coding experience is, so we can get an idea about what you guys are all understanding and what sort of your ability level is. I've popped that link in the chat, and this is the embarrassing part, where there's about a 20-second delay between me popping something in the chat and you guys hearing me talk about it live. But please do join the invite link and add your information. I can see a few of you popping in already. But let's have a look. While you're doing that, I'm going to have a quick look through the comments that have been added. Fantastic, thank you. Michael just got straight in there, didn't copy and paste it, typed straight over the code. I love you. I love your style, Michael. Love that a lot. If anybody else is jumping in, please do copy and paste that chunk from line 16 to 20 so you can do it as well. 0. Oh, that's interesting. Now, 0 coding experience is what we like to see here on Replit very much, because that's why we're building out our 100 Days of Code. That's why we're building the sort of the learning resources that we're putting on screen. One of the nice things about the way Replit does things is this multiplayer that we're working on at the moment. Michael and I are both in this same piece of work. So I can very easily copy and paste that chunk there, and I can make my changes. So I can put my name in. I can say where I'm from. And I can say my coding experience. And that's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? 25 years. This is why the amount of hair on my head is less than the average person, because of the length of time that I've been coding. But yeah, Michael, you've just said in the chat there that is amazing. That multiplayer feature is really, really cool. I think one of the things that I like so much about Replit is just the fact that it's so social and shareable. Coding 25 years ago, when I was a young man and I was learning to programming, was the sort of thing that we did in that cliched way, you know, in our bedrooms on our own in the dark, drinking a bunch of energy drinks. And now, if I want help, I can send a link to somebody and they can give me a hand straight away. Fantastic. Divital there is chatting to us in the chat. Divital, India Intermediate. Oh, machine learning AI. That's interesting. So handling Twitter bots. So Divital, if you can, pop in the chat and let us know sort of what sort of handling of Twitter bots did you do with those? Was it conversations with other users, or was it just sort of managing streams and systems and things like that? It's always very interesting to see what other people do and they get up to. Well, that's our icebreaker done for today, and we'll stop that now. But please, if you do have time, and that link is still in there, go in there. If you're watching it on catch up, please do. I say catch up like I'm actually on TV. If you're watching this as a VOD, please do go to the link and pop your information in. Just see how easy it is for loads of us to work on the same file at the same time. Now, today, we are going to start by taking a quick look at the questions in the chat. Then we're going to move into some of the ones that I've collected during the last 2 weeks. Now, Replit 101 coding helpline is something that we run on I'm going to say fortnightly. I'm stopping there because fortnightly apparently is a term that is very, very British. Every 2 weeks on a Wednesday at this time, we're going to run this session. If you're not able to catch us live, we do have a bunch of places where you can leave coding questions for us that we can talk about live. That is on ask.replit.com. That is in the Discord. And very soon we'll have our very own place on the internet where you can submit your coding questions to us that we can look at live, even if they are proper head scratchers. So let's have a look. We've starred a few here today. And I'm going to start with Divital's question, which is, I think, quite a general one here. But let's have a look and let's see. So the question is, since you're a leading programming platform, I wanted to ask you one question. Do you think programmers will lose their roles due to the advent of AI? Well, that's a very interesting question. That's a really interesting question. I suppose the question is, how good does the AI actually get? I think that the honest answer is that the AIs that we're building at the moment, sort of the machine learning language models, these huge things that computers are very, very good at, are an aid to the programmer. They are not going to replace the need for a programmer because they do still need a human to come up with the initial ideas and knit things together in a nice way. That's not to say that AI isn't going to revolutionize things. I mean, if you just have a look at our Ghostwriter AI and see the sort of things it can help you with, it is amazing. In fact, should we have a quick look? Why not? Let's bring up a REPL, and we'll bring up a Python REPL. He says not having his screen on. There we go. Put my screen back in. Let's make a Python REPL. And we'll very quickly, and in fact, I will turn on my Ghostwriter because I've got it turned off. I tend to turn it off because when I'm recording the Replit 100 Days of Code videos, when Ghostwriter suggests the actual answer to the thing I'm trying to teach about, it can be a little bit frustrating. So I'm going to pop Ghostwriter on in my settings. There it is. Turn that on. I'll also turn Code Intelligence on as well. And hopefully now we can demonstrate what a solid AI model actually does. So one of the things I could do is I could write a def for something like it's suggesting main to me, which is probably a good start. But let's do something like bubble sort and see what it suggests. Okay, pass it an array, and then it suggests the next line, and then it's the next line. And actually, do you know what this is doing? This is giving me a really good bubble sort algorithm right off the bat there. And ignore that suggestion then. I really wanted that one. This sort of thing, writing a bubble sort algorithm, and bubble sort algorithms, if you don't know, are just ways of sorting big, huge arrays of values into some sort of order, alphabetical, smallest to largest, something like that. And it's a really classic sort of algorithm. This is the sort of thing that I would teach about day to day when I was a teacher, and trying to demo it was always a pain because you can see there's a lot of code, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's a bit of a faff to write. What AI does for me is that sort of code that I know, but is a bit of an effort to write, makes it the work of a couple of seconds. So to answer your question, Divital, I don't think that AI is going to replace humans as coders, but it's going to help us out dramatically. And I think the fact that I don't need to look that up. I don't need to go anywhere and get a sample of code there. I can just use our AI Ghostwriter to build that for me is absolutely amazing. And the fact that it can do it so quickly without me worrying about it is brilliant. I mean, if I get rid of that, it's even so good as to suggest things for me based on the code. So a bubble sort algorithm. So based on a comment I'm putting there, we should hopefully start to see suggestions now. There we go. And you'll see there that it's now suggesting the entire algorithm for me based on the comment I made. And the comment is just me describing what the program's going to do. Unbelievably quick. Of course, what I'm doing as a programmer then is thinking about all the little bits that I want to plug in together to make something happen. And what it's going to do is speed it up massively. Thank you very much for that question. I thought that was fantastic. We do have an actual coding question from That Switch Kid. I can't do the day 5 challenge. I need help. Can you do me a favor? Get me a Repl link in the chat and we'll have a look. You can either give me the link directly from your URL up here and we can take a look at it, or you can use the invite button, generate a join link and send that my way and we'll have a look. But I would prefer the top one if you can, That Switch Kid, and we'll have a look in a few minutes time at how to do day 5 and build that together. Okay, other questions that we had from Potato Lord. Let's have a look. I understand making functions in JavaScript, but how can I memorize the parts of a code that actually manipulate the DOM within a function? I love this question, Potato Lord, not least because you've made me say Potato Lord aloud several times now, which is comedy gold on its own. But certainly the other thing is that, honestly, I have been doing JavaScript and DOM manipulation for probably the best part of 20 years now. And I still have to look up how to change the value of HTML using neat JavaScript like that. I mean, the honest answer is what you tend to do is go back and copy and paste things. If you use things regularly, they stick in your brain. But one of the skills of being a programmer is that you don't necessarily always need to remember this stuff. That's what Stack Overflow, let's be honest, that's what Ghostwriter, our AI, is for. It is to bring up those things that you will be scratching your head about and going, oh, I know what I need, but I can't remember the exact syntax. When you learn a programming language, when you learn 2, when you learn 15, the concepts are broadly the same, but it's the syntax that you forget. And it's those things like, how do I remember the DOM function? How do I manipulate the contents versus the value of something? And especially when using DOM to manipulate things like radio button boxes and things like that in HTML form. Those are the sort of things I've done multiple times, but still have to look up every single time. And every programmer has an area where they have a similar thing. So don't feel bad about it. What I would say is find a way of keeping a record of the things that you are trying to memorize close at hand. What I like to do is just keep a REPL with code snippets in it and put titles on them and just keep them close at hand. So I've got them all together. I'm sorry that doesn't really help you in terms of memorizing how to do something like that, but it is the honest truth of how a programmer works. That Switch Kid, I'm still waiting for your link. If you can send it to us, we can have a look. If you haven't started yet, that's absolutely fine as well, but please let us know in the chat. And I can maybe do a live build with you all and some spoilers on the day 4 content then. Okay, another question from Divital here. I think it's an interesting one. This is again, I feel like this entire live stream was designed to be like, let's help with actual code, but we're having some quite philosophical discussions about programming here, which is quite cool. Should I spend time refactoring code or be careful when writing in the first place? That is a dilemma, I'd say. Because the honest answer is sometimes you don't have time for your first draft to be efficient. Sometimes you're at a deadline. Sometimes the problem is a bit too big for your own head and you're trying to just get something that works. I would say this: If time is on your side, take the time to think about it and plan it out properly first. Because if you can plan it out properly, chances are you'll build it in a more efficient way. If you're just doing some down and dirty code that you just need to get something working quickly, or you're working to a deadline, then by all means, build it in that dirty, longhand way and refactor it later. Or, better yet, get an AI to refactor it for you. Is the honest answer. But we all have code we write this inefficient. And I think one of the things that makes a good programmer stand out is that there's always that bit tickling the back of your mind saying, I could have done that easier. I could have done that quicker. I could have done that in a more efficient way. And if you talk to app developers, 90% of them are desperate to rewrite their entire program. Oh, interesting question. Just about Replit. Does internet speed make Repl's run button get stuck in a loop? It shouldn't do, but we are rolling out new load balancing servers and things like that at the moment, which should help the problem out a little bit if that is causing an issue. I've not seen that happen before, but if you are having any issues, I would suggest you log them with Replit support to see if it is an issue that they can fix for you. And I'll show you how to get to that. If you go in Replit to the question mark button, down the bottom, you can go to contact support, and you can just straight away in Replit talk directly to our support people, and they are fantastic. And they'll be able to tell you definitively whether it's one way or the other. And it might be the case that it's happening, but talk to support because they're going to be the ones who are going to sort that out. I've never seen it happen myself though, but I did work in schools where the internet was a bit dodgy, so you never know. Right, okay, we haven't yet had any code from that Switch Kid, but I'll just stop to say hello. Good to see you as well. But the question the Switch Kid had was about day 5. So we're going to take a little detour to day 5 of 100 days and have a look at what the questions were and see if we can break that down and see if we can get an idea about how to build it. There we go. Oh dear, I've only done up to day 3, so I'm very, very quickly going to skip ahead a little bit to remind myself what that day was all about. Oh, that's great to know. The 100 days, hopefully, is a bit of fun, but keep going. We haven't got all the content out there yet, so you've got plenty of time to be working on it. Excuse me. Right, nearly on day 5. Haha, right, there we go. Okay, so I'll share my screen again now, and we'll do day 5 together. It's quite weird though, because I recorded this video, and now I have to actually do the work on it. Right, where's my button? There it is. Start day 5. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that everyone can see what's going on. Fantastic. And I'm going to hide my pane there and remind myself what the task was. If you're wondering why I can't remember what day 5 was, it's because day 5 was quite a while ago for me in building this. Okay. So this is one of those very simple programs, and I'm sure you've all done this before. This is like a BuzzFeed quiz, basically. Ask a bunch of questions and decide which character you are. Now, in my example there, the Marvel movie creator, should we build that? Should we build that? I'm asking questions, and they are very, very, very weighted questions. They're leading questions. It's things like, do you like hanging around? And if you say yes, you'd say you were Spider-Man. Do you have a gravelly voice? And if you say yes, you say you're Korg because he's a great big rock dude. And so the idea there is that we're going to chain together a bunch of ifs in order to get this working. Now, I just need to double check what you've learned so far here. So I'll just go to my table of contents. We've got ifs. Did I do else's? I did do else's. So ifs and else's is what we need to get this working. Now, ifs and else's are reasonably simple concepts. The idea is this, is that we start with an if and a condition, and then we give it the line of code or multiple lines of code that are going to happen if that's the case. And the else then is what happens otherwise. So let's start by printing out our title. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn off Ghostwriter and auto-suggest because it'll probably do most of this work for me, which is great for me, but not so great for you guys when I'm trying to teach it. So I'm going to print out the title, and we'll do a Marvel character generator just because that's what the example is. Okay, so let's ask that first question. So I'm going to set the variable to Spidey, and I'm going to set the question to input. Do you like hanging around? Now, at this point, then the user is going to be working. Is going to be typing in an answer. And the first thing we need to do is we need to see if what they've said is yes. This is where we use that double equal symbol. And you have to remember there that the double equal symbol is a comparison. It's basically a question. It's saying, is the variable the same as what the user's typed? And if it is, it'll do that line of code. We're looking for the string or the text of yes. So if they've said Spidey, we're going to say to them, you are Spider-Man. All my fellow Marvel fans in the audience are going, he knows his onions. He put a hyphen in the middle of Spider-Man. Yeah, I do. I'm going to put my else in there, though, because if not, I'm going to ask my next question. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to ask my next question because at this point, I need to say, then you're not Spider-Man. Okay, let's run that and test it. I've written a lot of code here without clicking run. Honestly, when I'm writing code for myself, I'm clicking run probably every other line just to check that things are working, just to check that things are in the right places, because otherwise you can write hundreds of lines of code and click run and things don't work. So it's best to run every couple of lines if you can. So here we go. Marvel character created. Do you like hanging around? If I were to say yes, it says I'm Spider-Man. If I were to say no, it says I'm not. The important thing is then that we go on and extend that and ask some more follow-up questions if they've said no. Now, if you've not noticed, the code, the very last tab. Oops, sorry, keep getting my toolbar popping up. There we go. The very last tab has a solution, which we can have a quick sneak look at. Now you'll see there that that solution doesn't have as many else's in as I've got here, but it's all down to your particular view. And to be perfectly honest, depends on your mood at the time sometimes when you're writing code. What I would suggest you do is take that as a starting point. The next line of code needs to be another question. It needs to be, in my example, the question about, do you have a gravelly voice? And basically, you can copy and paste lines 3 to 7 there, and you can repeat it underneath. Devital, yes, you can. Devital said, could you put it in a loop until the user said yes? You certainly could do that. At this point in the 100 days, I haven't taught loops yet, so we'll ignore that for now. What I'll do, I shall pop, I think I've got that public. Yeah, I have. I'll pop that link in the chat for you. And if you want, you can take that, fork it, and complete that lesson. But it's essentially copying and pasting lines 3 to 7, changing the variable name, changing the questions, and then changing the responses that you get. Do that sort of 2 or 3 more times just to check you know what you're doing. Make sure you can change things, and you should be in a good place then. But do please go and try. The point of the 100 days challenge is to get it work. Let me have a look, Divital, because sorry, Divital's saying that when he forks it, it's not working that way because I'm asking you to fork 100 days challenge. So that might not work in quite the way I'm expecting because they are special kind of REPLs. Let's have a look. Oh, they all seem to be in there for me. Yeah, they do seem to be in there for me. So this is what I get when I'm about to fork it. So I should see that code there. And what I want to do is copy and paste those lines a few times. Oh, sorry. I see. A live version of me adding code to a REPL. That would be if I invited you with a multiplayer link, which I'm not doing here because we don't all want to collaborate on a solution. I'm just trying to start other people off. Okay, I did see some of the questions fly past as we were saying that, so we'll have a quick look at those before we look at the predetermined the questions given to us in advance. Let's have a look. Oh yeah. I that is a good point. Yeah, we do everything in Replit out in the open, in public, first of all. And just remember that the private toggle is only available to those people paying for Hacker. Not everyone would have that, but that's worth us thinking about. We'll put that in the pile of things to the big pile of things that we want to add to improve 100 days. Peer programming would be a bit of fun. Yeah, maybe I can do a bit of that. Maybe not this week, maybe next week. We'll next fortnight we'll have a look at that. Fantastic. Right. Yes, the hacker plan. Yeah. So yeah, we haven't got that as a default yet on 100 days. Our initial thoughts were that most people that were new to coding may not be paying for a hacker plan, but clearly we didn't think about people that were necessarily new to Python. So we will have a look into that. I'll put that in the massive to-do list that we have. Okay, let's go and have a look at some questions that people have submitted beforehand, and I'll show you whereabouts we can get those from. So this was the first question that I got, and this user, Olu, has submitted their working code for question, I think it's question 14 of the 100 days of code. I'll just show you very quickly the code because it looks pretty good. It looks fantastic. But the user submitted a question on ask.replit.com saying, it's not working. I can't get it to work. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. And this is actually not true. And this is the easiest question I'm going to answer tonight, because it is not the case that this code doesn't work, but I have tried maybe too hard to be sneaky in the code that I gave first of all to make this into a better game. You'll see the point of this game, if I run it, is that it asks player one which move they want to make in rock, paper, scissors. So of course, player one is going to type R, P, or S. If the player two can see what they've typed, then it's not much of a game. Because if I walked up as player two, looking at the screen and saw that player one had picked rock, then I'm going to pick paper. In fact, I've got a 4-year-old daughter. She does this to me when we're playing rock, paper, scissors in real life. She waits a fraction of a second to see what my hand is doing before she picks hers. She's a terrible, terrible cheat. So I wanted to avoid people cheating in this program. So what I've done is actually something really cool. I've overridden the input method so that you can actually type R. And although it looks like nothing's been typed, it has actually gone in, and it's gone in as the letter R. So player two, if I click paper, there we go. Player two has won. So this program is working, despite the fact the user asked the question saying it's not. And the reason for that is the default way that Python deals with passwords. So I've done this first line here, which is from getPass import, from getPass, import getPass as input. Now, what getPass is a library, which we haven't covered at this point in the 100 days, but is in the content we've just published. And I've said, bring this thing in. From this library, bring this thing in, and that thing, getPass, is the thing that asks for normally a password. And in Unix systems or Linux systems, which is essentially what's running in the console, if it asks for your password, it doesn't show any indication of how many letters you've typed or anything like that as a security measure. What I've done is use the as input command at the end. As input overrides the default input command with this. So now if you use input like normal, you get a blank password style text entry, which makes the game a little bit more fun. Now, understandably, this user is not the only person that has come to us and said, why is nothing working? Like, I can't type anything. And in fact, I had this exact same problem when I worked in schools. It is you so expect that when you press a key on a keyboard, something to happen. The fact the default behavior of a password input mechanism is to be blank is weird. Let's be honest, even on our mobile phones, we don't have nothing appearing, do we? We have little symbols popping up when we put a password in. So that visual feedback is really important, and we come to rely on it. So if you are doing day 14 of rock, paper, scissors, or you come across somebody that's doing it and they're going, nothing seems to be working, then do remind them that my sneaky code is the bit that's hiding what they type in to make sure the game is actually a bit of fun and not just player 2 always winning. There we go. Okay, I want to pick up on this one next. This is a really interesting question. It's to do with day 17, but not specifically about the actual lesson. It's about the way something works. I'm just going to pick up on this at the end. Day 17 is a day where we talk about the exit command. The exit command is a way of stopping a program running from the code itself, which is a really, really nice thing to do. Now, in most places where you do that, especially places like Windows, if you were to say the exit command to Windows, the window you're running just closes, just poof, gone. And on most Linux distros, if you call exit, program just stops. Now, the engineers at Replit have thought about this long and hard, and have, let's be honest, for most people using Replit are programmers. And we need to tell the difference between a program crashing and a program being told to exit by the code. So the question here from Nomad is, in the example, exit leads to a message saying the Repl process died unexpectedly. Well, let's open up a window and let's have a look to see what actually happens when we call that. I'm going to use Python. And again, I'm just going to create it with a normal slug. And all I'm going to do in this program is that exit command. Many of you may not have seen it before, but the exit command is really, really nice for closing a program. So I'm just going to do that. And notice that as soon as you put the brackets on, I'm sorry, this has been pointed out. I call the rounded parentheses brackets because I am British, and we do. Brackets is like the term that covers all these sort of symbols: round brackets, square brackets, curly braces. And in US English, the more common thing to do is to call round brackets parentheses. It's a bit of a mouthful, and in British English, we just call them brackets. So apologies if anybody's been scratching their heads when I've been saying brackets from video 1. I'm going to patch that video with a little bit of a joke about me being British and apologizing for saying brackets a lot. But I'd be interested to see what that is internationally, because I wasn't even aware that was really a thing. Anyway, let's run this piece of code and see what's said. So run. And we get this red message. REPL process died unexpectedly. Now, it's because the REPL container isn't expecting the program to kill itself, to just go, bye, off I go. So it's a really handy way for you as a software developer to know that the program has called a function that's caused the program to stop. It hasn't randomly crashed. It has been told to stop. And this was added a few years ago, actually, to Replit. And I found it really, really useful because it is a lovely way of knowing the difference between my program has crashed and my program has been told to close. And they might seem, if you're early in your coding journey, you might be thinking, what difference does that make? Well, it makes a lot of difference because if my program has stopped unexpectedly and I see this message, I'll know that it's got to a part of the code that I didn't want it to. So I need to track that down as a bug. If the program crashes outright, that's a different thing. And there could be a number of issues associated with that. So that's the sort of thing that I might go back and really hunt through the code for. So the exit command, that is the correct behavior. Absolutely the correct behavior. And that is what we're expecting to see. In fact, in the video, I do say something along those lines. I could quote myself, but it's been a long time since I made day 17. I can't remember what exactly I said, but it is there. Oh, sorry, I missed this. I missed this comment completely. I'm assuming BDDY is buddy, but I'm going to call you buddy. But there we go. Already know Python, but I'm playing it along. That's nice. That's nice. I tell you what I have enjoyed as well from a few people is we've had a few people that have expressed like, oh, I've learned this thing. I didn't know that. And it's because they know Python, they're playing along. Like, for instance, the triple quotes trick with strings in Python is a common thing that people may skip over because, like, why do I need to know that? I can just do things. The triple quotes trick is really good when you're doing big chunks of text, and it becomes much more useful later on. This is about lesson 2930, by the way, when we look at F strings. F strings are a way of formatting strings and bringing in variables in a much nicer way than I've been showing you so far. But the three quotes trick allows you to write entire paragraphs and format your text beautifully, and it renders that exact same thing. In fact, if you know anything about comments, and I haven't really talked about comments until about day 30 either, but comments in code are where you'd put a hash symbol in front of it in Python, and you could make a comment to yourself. And those sort of things can only be done for more than one line in Python by just putting a triple quoted string in, which seems a bit weird, but it's because the Python interpreter is seeing a string and going, cool, a string. Haha, there's no print command with it. It doesn't do anything with it. And it's just carrying on, which is great and lovely. But I don't know, to me, as somebody that learned to program in C and Java initially, the fact that the only way to get a multi-line comment is to pretend it's a string feels a bit nasty to me. I have thoughts on Python, by the way. Maybe I'll do a series one day on David's thoughts on Python. By the way, if you're an ex-student of mine, you know my thoughts on Python. I don't think I shut up about it for the entire time I was teaching. Right, okay. This is an interesting question, and this one has been answered. This one has been completed, but I thought it was worth bringing up. We've got T-Man Learns here saying, I've done this code and I keep getting this error. What's the problem? Okay, so the first thing I did here was copy that code and pop it into my REPL and click run. And I'm not getting that error. It works fine for me. Now, this is not a very helpful response in most cases, because when you see a piece of code that's broken, and especially a learner who's going, I don't know what's going on, you have to try and think a little bit left field. And actually, the problem is that this isn't where the user is writing their code. They clicked the files pane and they created a new file. And they knew enough about it to make it a .py file, to make sure it was a Python file, and to make that file. And they put their code in there and they clicked run. And they got an error because they had something wrong in main.py. But it probably is worth pointing out to all our new coders out there that by default, the only thing the run button does is run the code in main.py. Making other files is a skill that requires a little bit of learning. It is not as simple as just making a file and clicking the run button in it. And this is because most modern computer programs are comprised of dozens, hundreds, thousands of files that all talk to each other and interact in different ways. It's not as simple, unfortunately, as just making a file and the run button runs that particular file. The run button is actually plugged in to do something quite interesting. And I'll show you behind the camera the magic of it. The .replit file, which is hidden away behind the scenes, which, again, if you're new to coding, please don't mess with these because they break REPLs if you don't know what you're doing. But they actually tell you what the run button's doing. In my case, the run button is on the console calling Python 3, which is the Python interpreter, with main.py. So that means every time I click the run button, that's the command it's sending to the console. And we're seeing the output here. There's a bunch of other stuff that we can have in this .replit file, and there's really good documentation on this if you are interested. But the reason that we end up in a place where people are making new files and then clicking the run button and wondering why it's working is because the run button is by default plugged in to run main.py. Divital, don't worry. I had a little break to watch Dragon Ball. Me and Vegeta have got a lot in common. Not the hair, unfortunately. Not the hair. But yeah, Vegeta's my homeboy. That's all I'm saying about the matter. You can clearly tell how old I am from the Dragon Ball references I'm making here. But there we are. So they're the hidden files. They're available on the hamburger menu. And within there are a bunch of configuration files. But as a new coder, put all your code in main.py. It's the easiest way to do it, and it requires the least fuss. And somewhere around lesson 30 something, I'll be teaching you how to use multiple files together and how to get them to talk to each other, because that is a step up in terms of debugging your programs. When things don't work and you've got 2 or 3 files, it's much harder to solve that problem than it is when you've got one file and all the codes in there. By the way, it also gets much harder when you've got asynchronous code problems and you're trying to deal with things that talk to each other and not necessarily in the right order. But that one was an interesting problem for me because that took our help team a while to decipher what the problem was just from that question. If you do have problems with code and you are posting to any of our forums, ask.replit.com. If you're on the Discord, by the way, the Discord's got that new forum feature on it. It's great for asking coding questions now. But if you're posting to any of those areas, it is always worth putting a link to your public REPL. And that is as simple as taking the website address from here and copying and pasting it, or using the publish button here if you want to put it in the community. The quickest way, though, is by copying and pasting that and just making sure that it's public and people can get and look at and debug your code much easier. In fact, the number one problem we have with trying to help people is people will give us a sample of the code, ask a question, and actually you need the entire code to debug something. So giving a REPL link is much, much easier and will get you to a point where you are getting things working. So that question is done. Right, one from the Discord. And you might quickly be able to answer this based on what we've talked about before. Now, this one has been answered, but I did want to show both those ways here. So this question is about running a Python script with multiple files. And I can't get this to show nicely. So I'm going to read it out because it's not in the best of formats. I apologize. So we have a user here that has a second Python file in the folder. How do they get it to run? And there are a couple of options here. The first one is really interesting. So this uses one of the lessons that I'm teaching much later in 100 days to get things to work. So it just so happens, like it's a coincidence or something, that previously we did that. Now, remember the run button, all it does is run main.py. So if I run it here, nothing happens because there's nothing in main.py. Now, the code that was suggested on the Discord was this, but I'm going to get it to do lesson2.py. And this is what happens. And it seems to work, doesn't it? It seems to work. It is running the code from lesson2.py, not the code from main.py. But actually, this is a bit of a weird workaround because one, you're importing a library, so some more code is coming in than what we're doing. And two, it's the OS library. Now, the OS library allows you to talk directly to the console. And what you're telling the console to do is run another Python interpreter and run your Python file. So there's a little bit of excess work going on here. The REPL's actually doing two lots of Python at the same time, in actual fact, when we don't really need that. Now, this works, and this will work fine, but you're essentially sending one REPL going, run my Python file, and that REPL's going, oi, sunshine, come run my Python file for me. And there's another guy coming in to do the work, which feels a bit redundant to me. The second answer seemed to be much better because if you just import it, it'll run. But let's have a look at that because it's not quite as simple as that. If I import lesson 2, see what happens. It works wonderfully. Now, this is how we talk with multiple files. That import command is what we need. The name of the Python file before .py is what gets imported. In this case, the entire code comes in and runs. It's a much easier way because the same Python interpreter that is executing the code from main.py is executing the code from lesson2.py. In actual fact, what's happened behind the scenes is the Python interpreter's gone and taken this code and sort of stuck it in where that line was. Now, if you want to bring in some code and you don't want it to run straight away, one of the things you can do is you can set up a bunch of subroutines instead of just neat code. And then you can use the import to call the subroutines. Interesting question. I'm not an engineer. No, I am. I was a secondary school or a high school computer science teacher for the best part of the last 20 years, and I work in the community team with my main focus being teachers and learners. So my job really is to make sure there's content and stuff going on for teachers and learners all the time. So a lot of the teaching community see me very regularly because I do all the updated videos and how-to videos for them on how to use Replit to teach in their classes. And we're just on that push now into learner content, which is why many more of you are seeing my my extra large bald head more regularly. But there we go. There we go. Thank you for asking, Divital. That was really nice of you. So there are two ways there of accessing a secondary file in Python, and I personally would go for the second option because it's the more straightforward way of doing it. But I want to give Discord users Yorick. I'm going to go with Yorick, but apologies. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. That method is genius. It is pure genius. It is second level, higher order thinking skills there. but you are essentially getting another dude in to do the work for you. And that could cause problems if you're having multiple files working at the same time. So it's always a good idea to use the simpler method if you can. Okay, we have but 5 minutes left. So I'm going to leave some of these questions that we already had for another time. And I am going to make my screen disappear for a little bit, just to give you a bit of a heads up about what's coming in 100 Days of Code and support for you guys. So if you want to get a question in for me for the next fortnight, it doesn't have to be live. The live component is there if you want it. And I really appreciate all you guys that came live tonight to chat to me and ask me questions. It really is nice having people in the chat because it keeps the conversation going and we can be a bit more fluid and flexible of what's going on. But I also realize that I've put this at a time which is good for me, but maybe not for all other educators. Learners, but maybe for not all other learners. And so I appreciate the amount of you that will watch this async. If you are watching async and you want to get questions to us, you have a couple of ways to do it. The first would be ask.replit.com. And that's this beautiful website where you can ask questions of our community. If you've got a specific question about 100 Days of Code, please do stick it in 100 Days of Code, where we've got pages already set up for the different days and the different projects. So if you've got a specific question about a project, you may see it already answered. And just remember, there are no stupid questions in the world ever, because if you need something clarified, that means it's an important question. If you've got a question just about code help, we have a code help area where I will be trawling through to get questions that haven't been answered or I think are interesting or are worth us pointing out as we go. If you want to put a question in code help that you specifically want for my attention, put Replit 101 in the heading and that will get my attention and we'll make sure to go through it. So ask.replit.com is a great community area and it's a great place to go to get conversations going back and forth, but it's also a great place to go to ask me questions specifically. There's also the Discord, which I have closed, but there we go. There we go. Our Discord, which you can sign up for from, if you're not a member, from our question mark button on the bottom usually. Oh no, sorry, it's in the hamburger button, and then we've got a link to our Discord there. Our Discord is great. Our community members on Discord are fantastic, and we have a bunch of places to go to get to chat to people that are working. There's events going on. We've also started putting some content in Hindi. So there's a Hindi channel there if you happen to speak Hindi. I unfortunately do not. Just English for me, which is a little bit boring. I apologize. Despite being Welsh as well. I got a B at GCSE Welsh. So that tells you all you need to know about my language abilities, unfortunately. But the one I'd like to point you to is our code help, which is the new forum posting styles that Discord has just rolled out. If you do ask a question, there are some guidelines, but the guidelines are mainly there to make sure you get a good answer. It's always a good idea to post a link to your REPL if you can. Discord is very active as well. You'll probably get an answer very quickly. And of course, if you want to mark it, as for me, make sure you put Replit 101 in the heading and I'll pick it up and we can look at them asynchronously. We'll also have the ability to put a comment in the chat before I get started. So the links for these go live usually the fortnight before, the 2 weeks before. Can't be using that word fortnight. It's a British thing, apparently. 2 weeks before the link will go live. So if you sign up on the Eventbrite, you'll be able to see the link and you'll be able to go to it. And it's available on our YouTube channel as well. You can pop your questions in the chat for that before we get started. And I'll make sure I star them and access them and see them. Plenty of time for us to get working. That's all from me, but please, I hope that you've enjoyed Replit 101 and the code helpline today. Please submit your coding problems in advance and I can make sure that we get to them next Wednesday and you can watch them live on our YouTube channel or you can watch them as the VOD afterwards. Thanks very much. I hope you're enjoying 100 Days of Code, and I hope you enjoy all the content that we roll out this week. For now, though, it's goodbye from me, and I hope you have a fantastic 2 weeks of coding. Don't forget, whatever cool things you do with Replit, we'd love to find out what they are.